Welcome to Ask the Experts. I'm Jill Schlesinger, and I'm joined by Jack Otter,
executive editor of CBSMoneyWatch.com.
And we have a very special guest today.
We
Jack.
sure do.
It is Ilyce Glink, the one, the only, the real estate maven of all mavens. Let me give you her bio. Ilyce Glink is the MoneyWatch.com home equity blogger. She's an award-winning, nationally syndicated columnist, best-selling author, radio talk show host, internet video show, owns and operates lots of websites, and I love this, her latest one, Buy, Close, Move In. So we've invited Ilyce here to join us for a little real estate wrap-up because we've got a lot of housing data out today. So Ilyce, thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to be here, as always.
And just quickly, before we start, we have another update in the stock market, Jack. So,
we did. I'm got to go back to something, though. Is Ilyce's book Buy Clothes and Move In? Or is it Buy
well, it is
Clothes, Move In?
It's a little bit of everything. It's whatever you want it to be. Okay. That's what it is. That's it.
How to close in a mortgage.
Exactly.
Yes,
Stocks
a good day in the market?
About 1.5%, so that's good. And S&P 500 closing in on that 1,300 level, so over 1,300 today on the S&P 500.
Tails are wagging on Wall Street.
Yeah, a technical big hurdle to cross, 1,300. So
if you believe that technical hocus pocus.
I know that is hocus pocus, but I'm just saying, if enough people believe it, you have to pay attention to it.
Good
That's
point.
the problem. At least we've gotten out some new housing numbers. The National Association of Home Builders said that the Home Builder Sentiment Index rose to the highest level in 4.5 years, which is kind of funny because it was so bad. It's so horrible. We're now at like the less horrible but still horrible place, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the builders are feeling a little bit better about things. I'm not so sure I would go out and go crazy about housing stocks right now, but you know, if you want to be ahead of the curve, eventually this is going to turn around. More interestingly is if you've looked at the architecture index, which is sort of the architecture fees, they're even out further than the home builders. They look out 18 months to 2 years because you design your house and then you go ahead and you start to build it. They're not seeing much of an uptick, a little tiny bit. So if everybody wants to be all happy about that, I'm all for it.
Well, Kathy sent us an email and she wanted to know, what's the outlook for home prices in the next few months? Are banks holding on to REOs, real estate properties they've foreclosed on, or are they listing them as soon as possible? And just curious if we can expect an influx of bank-owned properties.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think if I understood the question correctly, I think we are about to see another wave of REOs being listed by banks. I just think there is a lot going on out there, and banks have been holding on to some of these foreclosures because they don't want prices to be depressed any further than they already are. So I think we're going to see another wave come out, and it will cause some price drop.
And Jack, I know that you recently spoke to a Fannie Mae economist about what's ahead in 2012. Not that I trust anyone from Fannie Mae, but ostensibly they're in the business, so maybe we should trust.
Well, he gained a little bit of trust when he told me something that Ilyce has known for years, but I was interested that someone at Fannie Mae would acknowledge it, which was that the HAMP program, which is supposed to help people get modifications to stay in their houses, hasn't really worked. Surprise.
Breaking news.
But I was surprised that he would even go there. Okay. One very interesting thing also is that he and I... where are we going with here? We've got a clip, but first, you guys told me when I walked in here I looked funny, and now
I didn't say you looked funny. I just said that you've caused
me to become nervous here,
okay,
and I'm worried about this.
Let's have a moment. Everyone, take a deep breath. We've got a whole bunch of people in the chat room. We're going to so stay in the chat room. We know you're there. We are going to listen to you, so don't worry.
One stat that he threw out there, and I asked him about the importance of housing in a recovery, because actually housing is one of the things that tends to lead out of recovery. Obviously, it's not doing it this time, but I didn't know how bad it was till he said normally housing is about 18% of the recovery. So $1 in $5 goes into housing, and that helps improve things. But right now, of course, it's negative. So it's not only do we not have that 20%, we're actually negative below that.
Wow.
So that shows how much all the other sectors have to lift to get us out of this economic malaise.
That was a big black hole we dug ourselves, huh?
Exactly. But it wasn't all so bad. We had a lightning round, and I think Sally is going to play that round with Doug Duncan, Chief Economist for Fannie Mae. Chief Economist for Fannie Mae. So, Doug, we're going to do a lightning round here. I'll list various components of the housing market, and I want you to tell me increase, decrease, and why.
Okay.
Home prices.
Down slightly. The house prices typically bottom after sales activity bottoms, and we believe sales activity has bottomed. So another year, 2012, slight downside on house prices.
Interest rates.
Flat. We think relatively little change, and of course the Fed has signaled that by saying they're going to hold rates relatively constant for a couple of years.
Number of home sales.
Up slightly, 3 to 5%. We think that the number of actual sales bottomed last year, possibly even the year before.
Homes falling into foreclosure.
That's likely to continue if you include the things that are backed up in the courts. So in terms of new loans going to delinquency, that will slow.
And finally, rents.
Rents are up.
So
And we expect
I
them to
couldn't hear that.
continue to
Ilyce,
be
could
up
you hear
as we
that?
shift from a
No,
higher
but
rate
I've
of
heard him a
homeownership
million
to a
times,
lower
so I can
rate,
probably
and
tell
some
you
of
what he
those
had to
households
say.
are
He
moving
did
into
say, he
rentals.
said
you're
sales
not
would start to
putting in a
tick
great
up.
mood here.
He said that prices would tick down, but it seems to me what I thought I heard was 2012 kind of the leveling off year. Is that right,
He
Jack?
does see this as basically the bottom. I mean, the bottom, it's not like stocks where today's the bottom and tomorrow they're up 5%. So it's going to be slow bouncing along. It'll go local. So some markets will probably continue to decline while others go higher. But I think his basic point was, and I don't see him as Pollyanna. It's not like we had the head of the National Association of Realtors on. You know, I think it was a reasonable analysis, which was, if you're a buyer, there's no hurry, but now's probably a pretty good time the coming year. And if you're a seller, things probably aren't going to get too much worse, but don't expect that by hanging out for a couple months, you're gonna boost your price too much.
And Ilyce, do you agree with that general overview?
You know, a year ago, Doug Duncan and I hung out at a default servicers conference in Dallas, and he said exactly the same thing. But my point is that all of the housing economists have said every year that we're at the bottom for the last 5 years. This is the bottom, folks. Get in now before prices go up. And every year they've been wrong. And so I think that while I do think the ship is starting to turn, that we are seeing a firming of the bottom, I do agree with his point that there's no point in hurrying. Interest rates, we are all seeing the Fed push mortgage interest rates even further down. Shockingly enough, we just refinanced, not refinanced, but we had a 7-1 or a 5-1 that adjusted, and it's at 2.875. The margin on the loan is 2.75. So it's not as though interest rates are rising anytime soon, except if you have a LIBOR that's going up a little bit faster. But yeah, I mean, go out and buy a house, go refinance. It's a great time for it.
We've got a bunch of questions that I just want to start going through here. If you've got a question, you can obviously log into the chat room because we're going to be addressing some questions there. Okay, now, by the way, someone in the chat room already says, I agree with Ilyce. Too many pundits have had it wrong for too long. There you go. Okay, now, okay, first of all, Donna from Texas says, how do you see shadow inventory impacting the housing market? Meaning that all those people who might have been waiting to sell and are underwater on their mortgages and maybe waiting for a little bit of a blip up, is that going to create more price pressure, Ilyce?
We have two issues. So first of all, shadow inventory, in my understanding, refers specifically to the amount of inventory the banks have out there that they either haven't even foreclosed on or they foreclosed on but they haven't relisted. That could be 2 to 3 million properties that are just sitting out there. In many cases, and you see this, there's a big rumbling going on with some of my contacts who are in the default servicing industry. The lenders don't want to actually foreclose. Even though people have moved out, it's become a crack house, and who knows what's happened to it, because then they have to pay taxes. They're required by the local laws to start taking care of the property, checking on it every, X number of times a month. It costs them a lot of money to do that, and if they don't see a turnaround quickly, and nothing's turning around that quickly, short sales, you could grow old before you get the short sale done. So that's one thing with shadow inventory. Now you have all the sellers who've been dying to sell, but they're seeing property prices continue to go down, and they feel like they're stuck. They're absolutely stuck. And if you look at census data, it shows you that in the last 8 to 10 years, we've had the lowest number of people moving that we've had in maybe 50, 60, 70 years. And so people feel very stuck. All those people would like to sell as well. And I think the first time they see property prices start to turn around, I think they're going to jump in, and I think they are going to try and sell. And that is going to add a tremendous amount of downward pressure on pricing.
And Jack, really, there's no let up to that because it's not as if we're seeing the economy expand in such a robust fashion that we can expect new job creation and everyone getting big raises. So we're here to stay for a while. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel that you can see?
Not that I can see. I know it's there, but it's so dim that I can't even see it yet. Because we didn't even talk about all those people who are stuck, not just because they don't think they can get the price they want, but because they would literally have to bring a check to the closing. They literally cannot afford to sell their house because they have to pay the other guy to pay off the bank. So because of that, plus this overhang of the shadow inventory, it's just going to take so long. The only good news is that home builders are having such a hard time. I think we're building half as many homes as we were at the peak. So obviously that is one constraint on supply. But if that's, say, 600,000 homes a year, if Ilyce says we've got 2 or 3 million that the banks are sitting on, plus all these other people waiting to sell, you have to have quite a few years of not building 600,000 houses before you catch up with that. So it is pretty bad.
I want to jump in. Actually, Jack, the number for the last 2 years has been below 300,000 new homes built. It's actually what we've seen in the housing industry, a decline of 80% from the top, which is a depression any way you can see it for new home builders. Over the last month or so, the new annual rate has popped up a little bit. But when you look at sort of the end of the year numbers for last year, it was right around 310,000 units actually sold, which is, no wonder they're all up in arms. That's just atrocious. So,
am I right that compares with about 1.2 million at the peak?
Yes, 1.2. You're absolutely right about that. 1.2 million at the peak and 300,000. So you're down literally 75–80%.
Wow.
Terrible news for a builder, but frankly, that's what we need.
Yeah, because
we need that constraint on supply for a couple of years.
Absolutely, we need everyone to just sort of chill out, right? I mean, and say, slow down, take a deep breath, burn off this inventory. I mean, it's sort of Econ 101, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
we really want to just be able to say, okay, now we did this bubble, the bubble's burst. Now stop building stuff so we can decrease the supply, and we wait for demand to pop up.
And if you're a buyer, buy an old house, not a new one.
Yeah, no kidding. A couple more questions here. So here's one interesting. Jack Calvin writes, we bought a home in 2005, and currently the market value is $100,000 less than the outstanding loan.
Oof, wow.
So we are upside down. We live in Florida. We would be unable to sell for anywhere close to the value. Refinancing will not offer us any relief. We have no issue paying the mortgage. That's kind of interesting. But we don't qualify for any loan modification or principal reduction programs.
Yeah.
In the foreseeable future, do you believe that there will be any legislation requiring lenders to reduce the loan balances for individuals in our situation? This is like the holy grail of what people wanted mortgage modification to be.
Right.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I can't imagine the current political climate that would happen. I mean, if it was going to happen, it would have happened when there was much more of a sense of crisis. Not that anybody thinks things are good right now, but there's not that black hole, the government. We want the government to step in and help us. I mean, right now, kind of the zeitgeist that you feel in the air is there's too much government involvement and everything. We got to get the government out of it. So the idea of bailing out homeowners, and as horrible as that guy's situation is, the line would be, well, look, he can afford it. You're gonna bail him out? He shouldn't have bought that house. I'm not saying I agree with that, but that's what we would hear politically. So
I don't think. And Ilyce, do you hear anything about a potential for any sort of real mortgage modification, or has that day come and gone, and we've now lost the ability to do anything like that?
I think we should still have it. The problem is, and the government it's been a total and complete failure, as I've documented over the last 3 years on the site. HARP, the Home Affordable Refinance Program's been a complete disaster. Now they've retooled it for 2.0. Only 70,000 people got help the last time. I think if they just double that number, it would be amazing, and it's still just a fraction of those who need help. I want to go back to something we said earlier, and you asked Jack about a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a light, and it's very regional, but I want to point it out because the national numbers are getting very skewed by about 12 markets, including the entire state of Michigan, which I'm just going to count as one big market. Florida, which is pretty much another big market with a couple of lighter spots, not even bright spots. Atlanta, Georgia and Atlanta, disaster. Las Vegas, Phoenix, Southern California. These markets are dreadful. And then you've got some places in Idaho, Oregon, little tiny places. But there are some places around the country that have lower unemployment. I'm thinking North Dakota is doing great, and they also have no housing issue at the moment, and property prices are increasing. And so we are seeing in some specific markets that you're even seeing as much of a 2% average annual increase in property prices. While that isn't the stock market bouncing back, it's nice to see prices stop falling in some of these markets. And I'll be counting those and recounting some of that on my home equity blog over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, excellent. So here's some more questions, just some more general real estate questions. Christine asks, will rural properties follow the regular market trends? In other words, is bare land ready for development, subject to the same decline in value as we see in urban settings? And what's our answer to that, Jack?
Well, my reaction would be that because of this building slowdown, you might see an even greater loss in value, or at least temporarily, in those bare lands. Because right now, you're really a lot better off going and finding a deal on a house that's already been built and lived in than, look, a builder's got to buy stuff. He's got to hire guys to bang nails. That all comes at a premium compared with the loss of value you've seen in existing houses. So, yeah, I don't think right now is a good time to expect a turnaround. I mean, look, I just saw this incredible slideshow of these huge developments. There was one 877 house development that was planned. There are 13 model homes in the dead center of it, and the rest is just barren land. And so that's what you're dealing with. I don't see, unless, but again, it's all about location, as Ilyce was just talking about. In a market that's turning around, sure, it might be, there might be some movement.
And Ilyce, sort of raw, undeveloped land, any hope there, or is it market by market, or does it tend to lag? It always seems to me like that's sort of like the worst of the worst, takes the most amount of energy and time, and a hot market really does help that kind of development, right?
The problem with raw vacant land right now is that the banks have all taken such a bath on loans to developers. The developers have gone out of business in large part, and then what you've seen are banks going under at the rate of 100 plus a year because of all these terrible loans that they made. Though by and large, a lot of those loans were developer loans, and so there isn't a lot of lending capability for that kind of property development at the moment. So I don't see that turning around. And to Jack's excellent point, there are huge developments in places like Georgia, Florida, California, Arizona, and actually in other places as well, where you've got 3 houses in what's supposed to be an 800-unit development. And until those have now all gone under, those poor people are stranded. And until those get resold, usually with new construction at a much lower price, I don't think you're going to see that development happen that quickly.
And Ilyce, just when you think about the market, I know you look a lot about the rent versus buy, and we look at that calculator a lot. And that was sort of the greatest sign of a boom, right? Because buying was such a bad deal at the very height. But now rents are starting to creep up in a lot of areas. And how do you see that playing into the calculation? I mean, it's still hard to get money, of course. It's hard to qualify for a loan. But I know that rents are rising in many metro areas. How is that affecting the market?
Listen, there are some absolutely amazing deals out there, and a lot of them are HUD homes, that's FHA foreclosures. If you go to HUDhomestore.com, this is a one-stop shopping website for all HUD homes available around the country, hundreds of thousands of them. You can search by neighborhood, you can search by whatever. You'll need a HUD-certified realtor who can help you actually make your offer. But people are buying those homes with as little as $1,000 down, unbelievable interest rates, and they're buying these houses at a fraction of the price, and there's thousands of them. In Georgia alone, I think there's 40 or 50,000 of these HUD homes available for sale, with 7,000 selling every month and 10,000 coming on the market. So you're an additional new 10,000. I want to just be really clear about that. But the opportunities are really significant. So when you can buy a house for $70,000, $80,000, $100,000. Even in the North Shore of Chicago, my husband Sam, who's a real estate attorney, he recently had a client who declined to hire him because the property that he got, which was like a 2-bedroom condo in a really decent neighborhood, was, I don't know, a third of what it would have normally cost. I think it was like $140,000. And Sam quoted him the normal fee, and the guy's like, forget it. I'm just going to hire like no name over there because it's free. It's just really, there are a lot of ripple effects here.
It's amazing. Is there anything that encourages, we have a question in the chat room. Is there any way to encourage people to purchase more real estate and REOs? Is there anything that you could see? I mean, Jack, you had said probably not in this political year. We're in an election year. But is there something that we could do to kind of lure people into the market?
You know, I'm not sure it makes any difference whether people are buying REO or their neighbor's house. I think what we need more purchases, and that will bring prices up and it will reduce supply. No, I certainly don't. I mean, remember, these REO stands for real estate owned, so they're owned by banks. So the idea that the government would go in and do something to help the banks clean up their balance sheets,
No,
not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Okay, so let's talk about some refinancing questions. Dave in the chat room asks, he's got a 15-year at 5% fixed, 9 years to go. Should he refinance? And I'm going to say, go for it, man.
What's his rate, 5%?
5% fixed, 15-year. He probably can go to 10 years and pay the same amount, or refinance it for, the same amount. But he's going to go from 5 to 3.25 about for a 15-year fixed, and maybe even he could go less for a 10-year. Ilyce, you want to refi a 5% 9-year to go loan?
It depends, actually. He's really on the cusp because he's already at a 15-year, so he's already paid down a lot. And the question is, how much does he actually have in that loan? If he has $100,000, yeah, he might be able to go with a 10-year loan, 3%, not pay that much in closing costs. The key here is closing costs, right? Because if you're going to spend $5,000 on closing costs, not including prepaid interest, right, but true closing costs, you might as well just pay down the loan an extra $5,000 because the net effect of interest is he's almost done paying interest on that loan. Another year or two, and it's virtually going to be all principal. So he's really on the cusp. I don't know if it makes perfect sense for him. I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk.
Okay, so Dave, send us some more details. Let us know.
There are also some pretty good calculators.
Yeah.
If he can get a really solid quote on what the closing costs will be, he can plug it into an online calculator.
And
it might be worth, Jill, it might be worth if he trades closing costs for a slightly higher interest rate. So if he could go for 5 to 3.5%, right? So it's not quite the lowest you would get, but you don't pay hardly anything out of pocket, maybe $700. I'm making that up. Maybe it's $250. I don't know. But if you're paying less than $1,000 out of pocket, you could do $350, and it's a 10-year loan, and you're saving money virtually tomorrow, or even paying the same amount. That might be worth doing.
all right, here's one from an emailer who says that he and his wife are 70 years old with a net worth of $1.2 million, mostly in bonds and dividend-paying stocks. But our income is only $2,200 a month of Social Security income. We draw about $4,000 to $5,000 a month from investments. We would like to refinance our 8-year-old 5.625% 30-year fixed-rate mortgage to get a 30-year rate at today's rates. Our credit is very good. Loan to value 70%. Can we qualify for a conventional I can't even say it, conventional mortgage? There we go. A conventional mortgage in today's market. Well, I mean, they're drawing $6,000 to $7,000 a month in income, so they can qualify for something. I don't know how much. That's he says we've got an 8-year-old. We don't know how much the loan is, the amount is. And so
I don't know.
He doesn't say the amount, the outstanding loan amount. So is there a rule of thumb?
Yeah, well, Social Security is fine. They're not allowed to discriminate against them. And getting the amount lowered so that they're paying less is a good thing as well. I don't know how much this loan is, though. Assuming it's like only $200,000 or $300,000, $2,200 a month doesn't buy you that much. So they look at about a third of what you have, and that's coming in, that is your gross income. So off of Social Security, that's about $800 a month, and it's really a matter of how much loan that would support. Now, the other issue is, has their property price fallen in value so dramatically over the last 8 years that they're now underwater?
No, it's not, because their credit, they said their loan to value is 70%. So they've got 30% equity in it, but they also have $4,000 to $5,000 a month coming from investments. They have dividend and interest income. Can that count towards their income in terms of when you said a third of what?
They need a special lender. I think they'd have a harder, yes, maybe it should count, right?
Yeah.
But they may have a harder time with a lender today, because if the lender says, well, you're not required to take that out, or I guess at 70 they've got some sort of required distribution, but lenders are looking at what your total available income is. They can't go after a 401k if you decide to stop paying your mortgage. So they may not include that unless you're at the required minimum distribution. You could also lose that tomorrow in the stock market because they don't necessarily see that as a stable source of income. There's some questions. They probably would want to go to a mortgage broker and sit down. And then I just want to say that even though they think they have, you know, a 30% equity in the property, that may be what they put down originally. But if they live in Georgia, property prices have fallen in many cases 55 and 60%, and they could be underwater and just not know it. So
okay.
I'm just throwing it out there.
By the way, Dave in the chat room weighed in his 15-year 5% fixed rate with 9 years to go. We wanted to know, you know, how much he has. He just said he's got $92,000 balance. He likes the pay down option, but I want to look at my tax impact. So, in other words, he likes his tax deduction.
He won't have that tax deduction for very much longer if he even has it already, because he's paid down all the interest on that loan. And at $92,000, even at 5% interest, even if all he was paying was interest, he would probably, unless he's got some pretty significant other deductions, he's probably not getting the bang for his buck that he thinks he is, because, of course, almost 70% of Americans take the standard deduction. So I would say, Dave, that deduction's going.
All right. Look at that. Hey, Kevin wants to know, should he lock a 12-month lease with a tenant or ride out the market for a sale in 6 to 8 months from now in Hawaii? What do you think, Jack?
Take that income.
I'm with you. I like that. I take the lease. I'm
yeah.
like, you know, what's the difference? Have the income, relax. Ilyce, if you've got a tenant who's willing to pay you and cover your costs, or at least help defray some of your costs, take it, right?
Oh, you bet.
Okay.
The idea, and everyone should, I mean, even if you don't have a tenant, you should think about that. The idea that the real estate market is going to climb more in 8 months than whatever it is, I don't know, $700, $800, $1,200 he's charging that tenant. No way.
Yeah. Okay. Gigi is a 50-year-old woman. She wants to purchase a small home or condominium around July of this year. Is it wise to take the down payment from my 401k plan to purchase at this time, or should I continue to rent? Jack, she's paying $1,150 a month to rent an 1,800 square foot house.
Wow.
Why am I buying?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially don't raid your 401k. Pay 10% penalty, pay taxes on all that sheltered income only to buy. I would say save till it hurts right now. As we've just been saying, I don't think real estate's going to skyrocket between, say, this July and the following July. You know, can you put an 18-month savings target on getting a decent down payment together, and by then I don't think the price is going to be that different. And certainly when you think about the actual cost to you of rating that 401k is very steep. Much better to pay a little bit more for real estate and not take that hit.
Interesting.
Well, I'd also like to throw in that, again, another plug for HUDHomestore.com, from which I don't get any money, by the way, government site, but seriously, you know, there are FHA deals that you can get for $1 as a down payment, or $1,000 for a down payment, or $500. Teachers can get in for $1,000 down payment. I don't know what she does for a living, but it's worth looking at some of these programs. You may find the house you want and realize you only have to put $1,000 down and 4% interest for your life. And
can you say that website again, Ilyce, for our listeners?
Sure. HUD, H-U-D, homestore.com.
HUDHomestore.com. Okay.
Just checking it is .com and not .gov, or?
It's a .com because they hire an outside contractor to manage all of the listings that come in, but it's perfectly legitimate. It is the FHA foreclosures, which is what HUD homes are.
Now, here's a good news story. Dan in California writes that he's 40 years old. I'm in a 40-year mortgage with the first 10 years interest only. This was the modification that I received. He's one of the 3 people who got a modification.
Wow.
Anyway,
we should have him on the show.
But it's a 40-year loan. Is that unbelievable?
Ouch.
Holy smokes. Anyway, interest only for the first 10 years. And he wants to know, Ilyce, would you advise paying anything toward principal at this point? We are approximately $85,000 upside down.
Oof.
How long are they going to stay in this place? Because if they want to move, they won't be able to move until they're even. So putting money down as much as you can to kind of at least get to even is always a good idea, unless you're planning on walking away from this property. And if you're planning on doing a strategic default, then my answer is reverse. Don't put any money down. But if you have cash, they're going to try and come after you for it. That's not protected in like a retirement fund, like a 401k. So I would be very thoughtful about what you intend to do over time, and then back sort of reverse engineer what you do today based on that.
Let's assume they want to stay in the house, because I'm thinking, like, why go through the loan modification? You could have just walked already. But if he wants to stay in the house, assuming that, aggressively paying down to get to even as quickly as possible is what he should be doing, yes?
Absolutely the way to go.
Okay, got it. All right, here we go. You ready? This is Jack's. This is an easy one. I give him the easy ones. Okay. Mike from Illinois, are there any tax liabilities we need to be aware with the proceeds from the sale of our home, or are we free to do what we want with the money? Woohoo! Party!
Well, in this real estate climate, there is a very good chance that his proceeds are less than the $550,000 exclusion, capital gains exclusion. So as long as his gain is less than $550,000, I think he is free and clear.
And go party. And Ilyce, here's a sort of an interesting one. Priscilla sold her home with a short sale. She closed the end of August of 2009. She's got a 3-year waiting period before she can get a new mortgage, and that would be
Jill?
Yes. Oh, we lost Ilyce. Okay,
I just lost you for a moment. Start again.
Okay, here we go. Priscilla sold her home via short sale. She closed in August 2009. She's got a 3-year waiting period before she can get a new mortgage. Okay, I'm currently renting a home, and I want to purchase it with a lease option. I've improved my credit and credit score, and I really want to know how good are my odds of being successful in getting a mortgage when I get to that 3-year anniversary of the short sale. I read stories regularly of folks who have very good credit with no short sales in their past that are having a hard time getting a mortgage today. Should I be aware of anything specifically that I need to do in this climate?
You know, really, if you want to buy with a lease option, make sure you have an attorney look at that, because that is your actual purchase document, right? It may seem like it's a lease, but when you put an option price down, you're really making an offer for purchase, because even if you decide 5 years from now you're going to buy that house, that option price is going to be the price that you want, not necessarily the higher price that the property now has, hopefully. So I think it's important to get an attorney to look at that paperwork and make sure you're perfectly represented and that you understand what's happening. By the time you decide whether or not to buy this property, I think your 3 years are going to be up. It sounds like you're well along the way. Nothing else you don't really need to think about anything else. I would just, in the lease option document, usually the seller will give you a certain percentage credit of your monthly lease towards your down payment. And I would definitely make sure that that's included. You guys will have to negotiate that up front. And then you should have this kind of pot of money of equity so that when you're ready to buy, your numbers look a lot better.
All right. Ready to rock. At least try. Got to get going.
Right.
Okay. This is a good question, Jack, from a retired couple from Wisconsin who've been in Arizona spending our winter in the warm weather. Last 2 trips, we've rented a place, and now we're wondering if purchasing a second home may be a better idea. Now, where could you think of a better place to buy than a place like Phoenix, which is one of those scary markets that exploded and then imploded? Our issue is more than taking on additional responsibility versus being financially burdened. As we rent, we're finding out the shortcoming of rental properties as well. There's no free ride. So in our mid-60s, how do we decide which way to go? The Arizona home can become our second home in the winter, and perhaps down the road, maybe our primary residence. We don't know yet. I've looked at our own financial picture by putting some numbers together. No matter which way we do the analysis, the path to a decision isn't very clear. Any words of wisdom, Jack?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say really sorry about that Giants, whomping of your Green Bay Packers.
Unbelievable that you have to rub it in this guy's face. You have to take every occasion.
That sounds to me, if they can afford to buy right now in one of the most depressed markets in the country at the best interest rates of their lifetimes, and they think this might, this isn't something they want to summer in for a couple of years, winter in, I should say, for a couple of years, and then give up, that it might actually be their retirement home. Wow, fantastic opportunity.
But at least they're definitely having some issues, at least thinking about the onus of being an owner. In other words, how are we want to give them this great advice, but part of the advice has to be that he's acknowledging we get that owning is different than renting.
Right. I would say that when you buy a second home, one thing that's always been true is that single family homes tend to do better price wise than condos. And we've seen it in Georgia. We've seen it, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. You've seen condo prices get depressed far more than you've seen even the single family homes get depressed. So my first piece of advice for them is, you probably want to find a single family home in a gated community where there's somebody there to help manage the property when you're not there, right? Because you're snowbirds. But on the other hand, you're buying a single family versus some condo. And you want, in those communities, it's a lot of maintenance-free stuff, which is nice. You don't have to worry about mowing lawns, and you don't have to worry about fixing things. A lot of that exterior stuff gets covered. At the same token, you want to buy something where you feel like you're not going to just have a black hole and it's never going to, even from the low level that you're at, that it's going to fall further. So it's a delicate balance of really where you want to buy and how you want to manage that. But thinking about it ahead of time and having a plan for management is important. The nice thing about Phoenix is you've got, especially for a senior couple, and I've been there 3 times, I was there 3 times last year, looking at property. You have incredible resources like Mayo Clinic that's there. You've got incredible places for the next stage of life if you decide you really don't want to be in a house anymore. And you've got loads of shopping. They cater to seniors. You want to be in a community, in an area that is easily accessible, has the community that you're looking for, but the maintenance-free aspect to it so that you can leave when you want to leave and go back north and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I would also say that to think about your retirement, it's not like, oh, I'm going to retire there and be there for 30 years straight. You don't really know that. And I think that it's a great way to think about, Ilyce, is to say, for the first few years of my retirement, I really do want to be able to go back and forth because I want to be near my family and my grandkids, and that's really important to me. Then, of course, your grandkids get older and they don't really care about you because they've got their own lives. And so I think that there is a lot to be said for kind of forecasting ahead of time. And if you really look, my parents have rented in Florida for about the last, I don't know how many years, because my mother's like, absolutely not will I own a home because I don't want anything to do with managing it, dealing with it, da-da-da-da. That's it. Case closed. If you're the Susan Schlesinger model, they keep renting. Rent cheap. It's great. If you are the kind of person who really loves it and you love decorating, you like to maintain it, and you get it in a good community, then great. That's good too. But a lot of these decisions, we try to make them financial. They're really not. They're really about your real life also. So, there's some combination. Okay, we got some more questions here. Ilyce, pay attention here. Okay? Okay, good. Neil from San Diego wants to know, are there any options for a homeowner that has a non-government owned mortgage that wants to refinance but can't because the value of the home has declined so much that the bank will not refinance unless the owner cuts a check for most of the equity lost? Will there be a program designed similar to HARP for these situations? Short answer?
No.
There you go. That's what I thought. Just giving you a big layup there.
I get that question quite often, and my heart is breaking for those people because and in a lot of cases, they're just regular adjustable rate mortgages, but they have some little twist to them and they were sold directly to other investors, and these people are in real trouble and there is no help that I've been able to find for them. So I'm sorry, no.
Okay, this is another hard look. I don't want to end on a sour note. We'll get to some good stuff at the end. This is Susan from Arlington Hills, Illinois. By you, maybe.
Down the street.
Down the street. My husband and I were executives. We both lost our jobs on the same day in 2009. That is a bad day.
I'm guessing it was March.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. We tried to get a loan modification to stay in our home of 15 years while on extended unemployment, but it was an exacerbating process. Don't have to tell us. While bills mounted because of unemployment and medical issues forced us to miss mortgage payments after we drained our retirement accounts. This is terrible. Our credit scores dropped. We found that getting jobs at our previous level wasn't going to happen. Employers run credit checks at VP level positions, so offers dry up once the credit is run, right? We've talked to a lot of job experts who've told us that. We're now in the process of a short sale so that we can at least start over. In an underemployed situation, but both employed for a year now, can we ever dream of owning again? Now, that's an interesting question. Ilyce, should these people really?
Absolutely. They can dream. Absolutely. And I think it'll become a reality as well for them. But the short sale process is become ridiculously protracted. 5 years ago, it was protracted, and the banking industry didn't set up the right processes in place. I remember going to a mortgage bankers convention And standing there as listening to the Mortgage Bankers Association talk about short sales and raising my hand and saying, you guys aren't doing this now, and it was 5 years ago. What are you doing with all these people? So that process can take 6 to 8 months. So once you're done with that process, you've got 3 years to rebuild your credit. And with jobs and rebuilding of the credit, Arlington Heights has had a huge hit in the prices. If they want to stay in that community, they will be able to. Maybe not the lovely place that I'm sure they have now, but something, very nice, simply because prices are down 30-40% in some of those suburbs. So yes, you can get there. It's just not going to be maybe as quickly as you would like it to be. But people like you who are resourceful have the best chance of anybody of making it.
You know, one thing I will throw out, there's a lesson there for people that sometimes strategic default really is the best option.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to raid your retirement savings, so suddenly you have no retirement, and you still lose your house, you're no better off than you would have been walking away, but you're much worse off, I should say, because at least you would have had that retirement income, which cannot be docked if you default. So I know people don't like to do that. They feel like it's morally wrong, but as I always say, the bank, when they make business decisions, they don't look at it that way. If the bank is stuck in the corporate equivalent of an underwater property and it's in their best interest to walk away, they do it in a second without any thought.
Yeah, so, and we want to, like, no judgments here.
Yeah.
Don't be turning your nose down at somebody. You're not walking in their shoes. Let them get through that, and you do the best thing that's for your family. That's what you do. Okay, here's a question from Rhonda, who is a professional home stager in the Houston, Texas area. All right. Woohoo. Okay, she asks, do you believe that home staging has had an effect on the real estate market? Why or why not? Ilyce, you're a home staging kind of fan. You've written about this, I know.
I've done videos where you can see the before and after of the home staging video, which is really cool on my YouTube channel. Check it out. They're pretty popular videos. I'm a big fan of home staging. The problem that I have, the problem is that it works really well. And everybody believes now when they go to buy a house that it should look like it's ready to be a set for HGTV. And so I think we've set really unrealistic expectations with HGTV, which is one of my all-time favorite channels right next to their sister network, Food. And that's given stagers a whole lot to do. But for people who don't have that level of taste and expertise, you are at a competitive disadvantage if you are trying to sell your house. So I think staging has had a profound impact, and it started with television, and it is now filtered down to the rest of us. If your house doesn't look like a restoration hardware cover, catalog cover, you're going to have a problem selling your house.
Oh, my God.
This woman's going to be putting
this... I just say that. Rhonda, did you get the edit on that? So start it right
at allowed to use it.
Just use this and show this to all of your clients. Put it in your all of your materials. Deborah asks, we've been considering investing in a vacation home or a rural recreational property. Land prices seem to be about 30% lower than just 5 years ago, but we don't know what kind of offer to make. So we've also thought about buying land in another state or a vacation rental. What's the market like for this type of property? How do we find out where the best deals are? What kind of research? What should they be doing, Ilyce, especially if they're going to go far afield from where they are currently?
If you're not going to build on land in the next 6 months, don't buy raw land. It's just, there's too many things that can happen. You can't get a loan for raw land anymore, even if you're just an individual, let alone a developer like we talked about earlier. So if you're going to buy an existing vacation house, what I'd like you to do is test out whether there's an actual need and market for it. One way to do that is to go onto VRBO, vacationrentalbyowner.com, see what the rentals look like, how rented is the property, look over the course of a year, see the comments that people have left. There are a number of these sites. Sometimes owners will list with a bunch of the different sites. And then broaden that search to see what's going on in that neighborhood. There are some places where if you're not on the beach, there's no point in buying a block away. It's a block away. Nobody goes there for the block away. They go there for the beach. So you really have to understand the market you're buying in. And then I like working with a local realtor, somebody who's won the awards, who's at the top, who's doing the most deals. And before you go there and with a checkbook in hand, I think I would go and have a visit and just kind of tour the area and listen to the broker talk about what's going on and what's moving, what doesn't move historically, what's been important, what people are looking for when they come to the vacation area. Once you know all that, you'll be able to make a really intelligent decision about what to build or what to buy.
Okay.
I would also add, I heard some sort of conflict in that question as to what exactly the purpose of this purchase was. Is she looking for a fun place to go with her family as a vacation house, or are they looking for an investment? Right. Because they might be different. You might get one that's both, but they could be different goals, so they need to firm up exactly why they want this property.
Maybe one wants one thing and one wants the other. You never know. Okay, so we're going to have to wrap up the show. We got to wrap up the show. For everybody watching, thank you so much. And for those of you, we didn't get to your questions. We will have Ilyce back. We will do another real estate show. Ilyce, I did want to just give you a few seconds to talk about this independent foreclosure review website that you asked us to kind of make sure that people know about this. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So there was a huge settlement between the banks and the OCC, which regulates the big banks, and the Fed is involved in it as well. What it is the banks, anybody who received a foreclosure notice, it doesn't mean you went into foreclosure or went through foreclosure. It means that you might have gotten a foreclosure letter. Maybe it was a mistake. If that's you from the beginning of 2009 until the end of 2010, you may qualify for a piece of a huge pot of money that the banks are being forced to set aside. And the way that you find out is you have to fill out a form. Go to this website. It looks like a total scam, but I promise you it's not a scam website. The website is independentforeclosurereview.com.
It really looks like somebody I think maybe put it up yesterday. But it's real. It's real. You know it's real because it's so ugly it has to be real.
Yeah, it's real, and what you can do is you can call the toll-free number and request that they send you the paperwork. Now, many of you who are listening who did receive a foreclosure notice and are still, I don't know, somehow they found you. That's really the problem, right? If you were foreclosed on inappropriately and you've moved on, they don't know how to track you down. So they're doing this call-out to have you get the form so that they can evaluate whether or not you're eligible to participate in this settlement. And you may have already gotten this form if they were able to track you down. If you did, please fill it out and mail it back, and then they will tell you in a couple of months whether you qualify. There's going to be this independent foreclosure review process. It'll probably take 4 months to do, but I just feel like there's so many millions of people who were absolutely horribly tarnished over this great recession, and if you can qualify for a little bit of money, it doesn't bring back your house and your life, but it's a little bit of money.
I had one question for Ilyce. Is everybody eligible? I mean, all states, or did California participate in this too in the end?
They did. I believe that everybody, this particular one is different from sort of the other multi things that you're hearing about.
Gotcha.
But this one is through the OCC, and there's about 20 odd banks. It lists the banks on this website. Just click on the blue button for more information. It lists the banks. It gives you a very helpful FAQ. I'll be writing about it for MoneyWatch, but anybody who thinks they might be eligible, I want you to go to the website, call, get the paperwork, and get it started. You do not need an attorney to help you, so don't pay anybody. This is completely free.
All right, that's a good public service, as always.
There you go.
Ilyce Glink, the MoneyWatch.com home equity blogger. Jack, do you feel better or worse about the real estate market right now?
Well, I think I feel a little better because we're reminded that knowledge is power, to pull up a real old good cliche. You know, if you know what you're doing, and if you know that you need professional help to really nail your goal, you can do a lot better. It's important not to fly blind because this is very complicated stuff. You'll make mistakes, but there's a lot of opportunity right now.
And Ilyce, are you feeling, all right, I know every year is a different year, but here you are, it's 2012. Now we're 6 years away from the peak. You feeling any better today?
I am, actually.
Good.
I am feeling a little bit more optimistic. It's a very slow turn that we're doing, very slow. But even though I think the unemployment number is kind of tricked out, I do see the overall unemployment situation getting a little better. I do see companies more willing to spend a little money. I am hearing that people are starting to get jobs who have been unemployed for years. And so I feel a little bit more optimistic. Not as optimistic as the home builders, mind you,
yeah.
But I'm feeling a little better.
Well, you know what? I always feel better when Ilyce is around, and
Absolutely.
I feel good every time I see you, even though I didn't mean to, get you off your game at the beginning of the show.
I'm verklempt. How about that?
Oh my God! When you hear Jack Otter say verklempt,
I knew
it's
that
too
would
much.
get you.
I'm verklempt. I'm verklempt. All right.
Jack,
So
really?
read Ilyce's blog, Home Equity. It's fabulous. Subscribe to our RSS feed. Go to Ilyce's at thinkglink.com. Yes, it is thinkglink.com. Follow her at Glink on Twitter. Follow Jack Otter at Jack Otter. Sometimes he tweets.
I do. I tweeted twice today. Perhaps thrice. Yeah.
Thrice times more than usual, I
Exactly.
imagine. And you can follow me at Jill on Money. Thank you very much for watching and for participating in the show. If you want to hear more about this kind of stuff, come to Money Watch every single day. We're covering it, and we'll see you next week. Next week, we're doing something fun. It's going to be a State of the Union kind of week, isn't it? Is that right,
Yeah.
Megan? Yeah, so State of the Union's next week. Ilyce's BFF with the Obamas, because they're all from Chicago. They're all friends. So maybe we'll have her back sometime to talk about that, her inside look at the Obamas. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Jill Schlesinger.
I'm Jack Otter.
And we will see you next week on Ask the Experts.